Imagine sitting down for a quiet dinner, then drifting off to a peaceful sleep, all while 6 slaughtered bodies are stacked on top of each other, just on the other side of the wall. The killer didn't flee the scene. He stayed. He lived among the dead for 4 days. Some places exist on a map, but feel like they don't belong to this world. The Hinterkaifk Farm, 70 kilometers from Munich, was one of them. A place that God forgot. The year is 1922. Germany lies broken in the shadow of the Great War. Poverty, starvation, and a biting frost grip the nation. But the chill that the Gruber family felt had nothing to do with winter. Our story begins on a frozen morning. Andreas Gruber, the 63-year-old patriarch, steps out to inspect his land, only to find something that shatters his reality. There, on the virgin, untouched snow behind the homestead, strange footprints appear. These weren't wolf tracks. They weren't from game. They were human. Andreas followed the trail backward. They emerged from the tree line, the dense, dark heart of the forest that loomed behind his land. They came forward, straight over the fence line, and stopped dead right behind the wall of his own house. And then came the terrifying realization. There were no return tracks. Someone had come from the forest last night, and they had never left. Andreas stared into the tree line, and the forest seemed to stare right back. He didn't know it yet, but the guest wasn't out there in the woods anymore. He was already inside. To truly understand the horror, you have to know that the Grubers weren't a normal family. They were isolated, not just by the miles of snow, but by the hatred of their neighbors. Andreas was a tyrant, violent, miserly, and cruel. But there were darker whispers in the village, talk that Andreas's relationship with his daughter, Victoria, went far beyond father and child. They said little Josef, the 2-year-old, was born of that very sin. Perhaps it was these very sins that blinded them to the first warning. 6 months earlier, the previous maid had quit in a terrified frenzy. No one took her seriously. As she packed her bags, trembling, she said, "I'm not staying here another minute. This house is haunted. I hear noises at night. Someone is breathing inside the walls." Andreas just laughed in her face. But now, 6 months later, in the deep snows of March, the laughter had died. Strange things began to happen. A newspaper appeared on the porch. It was from Munich, a paper no one in the entire region subscribed to. The postman swore he hadn't delivered it, so who put it there? Then keys started vanishing. The barn key, the main house key. Andreas changed the locks, but the very next day he found fresh scratches on the new metal. Someone had been trying to force their way in. I want you to close your eyes for just a moment. Imagine being trapped in a house where the neighbors despise you. The snow has sealed every escape route. Your keys are gone. And at night, you hear the heavy thud of footsteps right above you in the attic. You're holding a gun, but you have no idea what to shoot at. If you can feel the weight of that isolation, hit that like button right now, because this story is about to go pitch black. March 30th, one day before the massacre. In the town market, Andreas ran into a neighbor. For the first time, his pride cracked. He confessed, "Last night, I heard running in the attic. I took a lantern and went up. No one was there, but..." He paused. On the snow, on the roof, there were footprints. Someone had been walking on the roof. The neighbor offered help, even a rifle, but the stubborn old man refused. He headed back to his home, to his own slaughterhouse. The following evening, March 31st, a new maid, Maria Baumgartner, arrived at the farm. It was her first day on the job, and her last day alive. Night falls. A blizzard begins to rage. Based on crime scene reconstruction, we know exactly what happened. Around bedtime, the killer, or killers, was hiding in the barn. The Hinterkaifk barn was connected to the house by a short corridor. One by one, he lured them out. Perhaps he agitated the cattle or made a noise that shouldn't be there. First, old Andreas. He stepped into the darkness of the barn and never returned. Then his wife, Cecilia.
Papa?
Then Victoria, and finally the 7-year-old little Cecilia. The killer stood there clutching a heavy mattock, a tool designed to break frozen earth, not human bone. No screams, no gunshots, only 4 bodies stacked like cordwood. With the coldness of a butcher, the killer covered them with straw and an old wooden door. But the carnage wasn't over. Maria, the new maid, was in her room. She didn't even have time to change. The killer entered, and it was over. And then the most painful part of the file. Josef, only 2 years old, sleeping in his crib in his mother's room. The killer stood over the cradle, looked at the innocent face, and struck. The force was so great, it crushed the canopy of the crib. Autopsy reports later revealed a nightmare. Death was not swift for everyone. Victoria had survived for hours in the dark barn, buried under the bodies of her parents. In those final, agonizing moments of terror, she had torn out tufts of her own hair until silence finally took her. This is the point where the human mind freezes. To kill a family out of hate or madness might be understood, but to kill a maid on her very first day, or a 2-year-old infant in his sleep? What was going through that killer's mind? Was he even human, or something that only wore a human mask? Tell me in the comments, if you were the detective on this case, who would you look for? A madman or an enemy from within the family? If you think the story is over, you are wrong. The real horror has just begun. The killer did not flee. After slaughtering 6 human beings, he locked the door and stayed for 4 whole days. Imagine snow falling outside, and inside, the killer lights the fireplace. He goes to the kitchen, fries sausages, and eats, all while the bodies lie just a few meters away. The next morning, the postman arrives. He sees the door is locked, but smoke is rising from the chimney. The day after, a coffee salesman knocks. No one answers, but he feels eyes watching him behind the curtains. Even the guard dog, wounded but alive, Every day, the killer went to the barn where the bodies were piled and fed the cattle. He was worried about the hunger of the cows, but not the life of the infant. This cold, mechanical behavior still makes the skin crawl after 100 years. On April 4th, the neighbors, led by Lorenz Schlittenbauer, grew concerned by the family's absence and broke down the door. The silence was shattered. The stench of death filled the air. When the Munich police arrived, they faced endless enigmas. The cash in the drawers remained untouched. It wasn't a robbery. There were no fingerprints, nothing. Years passed. The investigators changed, and finally, in the depths of despair, the strangest order in the history of German police was issued. They exhumed the bodies. They severed the heads of all 6 victims. The skulls were placed in boxes and sent to Munich for mediums and clairvoyants to study, hoping the dead might speak. But the dead remained silent, and worst of all, these skulls were lost forever in the chaos of World War II. Today, in the place of that farm, there is nothing. The house was razed to the ground by the people. Only a simple memorial stone stands there now. The Hinterkaifk case, with thousands of pages of interrogations and hundreds of suspects, was never solved. Perhaps the killer was one of the neighbors who lived with that secret until the end of their days. And perhaps, as old Gruber used to say, that house truly was haunted. This was the story of the invisible guest of Hinterkaifk. The world is full of shadows waiting for us to turn our backs. If you don't want to be alone in this darkness and wish to uncover the next cases, hit the subscribe button.